All right, guys, what is going on? Welcome back to the Sophisticated Man podcast. I have Brandi here again. You guys might have seen her from the last podcast. Maybe not. Maybe you're new here. For the people that don't know you, just give a quick little brief introduction about who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on here. I always love having these talks with you. But I guess I'm a fitness guru. I've been heavily involved in a healthy lifestyle for about 4 years now and diving deep into just the whole lifestyle with food, gym, mindset. And I'm also in the corporate world too. I sell engineering services. So the fitness stuff is kind of like a side gig that I got going on with content on social media. But that's the gist of it. So yeah.
Love that. And guys, yeah, if you want to see what she's all about, I'll post all her links down in the comment section if you guys want to check out her page. She's got a lot of great content on there, so definitely go give her a follow. But yeah, today I wanted to really bring you on and talk about relationships. We kind of touched on it a little bit last time, but I think having like a full discussion, especially like from a man's perspective, I talk to men and, obviously from a woman's perspective, I think that could really help give guys a different point of view, I think, on just, how that sounds from the other side, essentially. So,
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the same thing for us females. I think there's a lot of disconnect because we truly don't understand what you guys, how you guys think, how you guys act, and we don't
yeah.
really dive deep into development or reading books about men
Hmm.
and having those conversations. So I think it's huge too.
Yeah. For sure. I was just having this conversation on my last podcast, and my guest was like, "They don't teach you this stuff in school." I was like, "Yeah,
Nope.
they don't. You literally like the only way to learn this stuff is through straight up experience. And
Yeah.
if you don't have that, what else is there to go off of? Content like
Yeah.
this, you know what I mean? So that's basically it.
Yeah,
Um,
and I'm sure there's not a lot out there too. So I love that you're doing this and bringing light to those experiences because I'm sure a lot of
mhm.
people need the help and perspective on this type of topic. So
Yeah. I think especially in the men's space, because guys have a lot of like bad influences when it comes to what's out there, how to have like a healthy relationship with women and just, what that looks like and also how to set boundaries, how to protect themselves because there's a lot of stuff going on. So, kind of like the central topic I wanted to at least start with to get your perspective
yeah,
because just based on the statistics that are out there, I'm not sure if you're familiar with a lot of them, but the divorce rates, like all-time highs, they're like 60, 65%, like absolutely
yep,
insane. And also another issue is a lot of more guys, maybe people a little bit younger than us, but generally our age bracket, especially men, are having like less sex now than basically any generation ever before, which is like pretty wild. So there
that's
seems,
wild to me.
yeah, it's like I didn't know that until fairly recently.
I would have thought the complete opposite with all these friends with benefits and
Yeah,
situationships that's become normal nowadays.
you would think. You would think so, but there's like a study, I found it on Google somewhere. It said that like men, specifically men who are like mid 20s and younger, are having fewer and fewer sexual experiences just like altogether. So seems to be a big discrepancy in like the marriages and just like men who are not really getting a lot of interactions with women. So in your perspective, just based on what you've been through or just friends that you know, whatever, what do you think is so messed up about relationships? Like, why is it so hard for us to relate to one another?
I think from my experiences that neither person has found their why, their purpose, and their sense of an individual, right? I think that in order to have a successful relationship, now I'm coming from myself, I have not had one yet, but I think from all of the past experiences that I have had and all of the development within that space that you need to figure out who you are and be an individual and be more of a partner in a relationship and not rely on that person to be your sole source of life, right? Like your happiness and your why. Like another
Mhm.
person cannot be your why.
Right.
And I think that that's the disconnect. I think one person relies on the other to pour their cup. there was somebody the other day, I actually had a conversation specifically about like situationships and people and stuff. Like, if one person has found their why and one person knows what they want and are happy and they have a full cup, but this other person doesn't have a full cup and you're pouring half of your cup into their cup and they still have half left, what are they giving back to you? You're
Hmm.
getting no benefit from that other person. So, to me, I think it's just people not diving into their whys and spending their 20s figuring out who they are first and having their own career, their own finances, and things like that.
Mm. It's a very valid point. I think what you're describing is more or less like codependency, when somebody's just all about the other person and that's kind of the only thing that they have going on. And I would agree with that. I'd say I don't I guess maybe I'm kind of like guessing. I don't know who's that worse on, men or women. I think it's kind of even, to be
Yeah.
honest.
I think it's even too. Yeah.
But just in my experience, like knowing, the men that I work with and just like in my own life, I feel like some guys do really fall into that trap where they make everything about getting a girlfriend. They make
Yep.
everything about the woman. Like that's essentially their mission in life. And that should just never be like it should just never be the case where you're focused on your woman like so much that you forget about having a purpose, having a life outside of that, because that's one of
Yep.
the things I've probably talked about this on the channel. That was my experience like a few years back when I had my first, like, you want to call it a relationship, but more or less a situationship if we were, just describing that. I
Yep.
would be sitting in school and I'd have the worst day ever and nothing would go my way. Just like I would just be miserable. But then I get one text from this person, whole mood would change, right? Like I'd go from
Yeah.
0 to 100 in like a second, which is incredibly unhealthy, like very, very unhealthy. I think a lot of guys do that because they get so obsessed with a woman, they put her on this pedestal. It's like, bro, number one, she don't even want to be there, like first and foremost. And number two, you're setting yourself up for failure because you're going to neglect all these other areas of your life to even keep her attracted to you. So it's like kind of like a
Yeah.
lose-lose situation.
Yeah, it
Have you
definitely
noticed that for
is.
you?
Yeah, I was actually going to say I can relate to that exact situation. Years ago, my ex from college, again, I didn't have a self-worth, a purpose.
Mm,
Literally, I put everything, all my energy into that person. And when you fall in love, I think love is the most powerful drug that we have.
facts.
And it can get scary though, because again, like I could be having a good day and then I would see something online that would instantly irritate me, or like he liked some girl's selfie and I would like got pissed off and it just immediately turned chaotic, you know?
Mhm.
And I don't think that's healthy because I was relying on for everything, my happiness, like everything. So now fast forward 4 years, it was funny, I actually just got out of a silly situationship. Like certain things would come up and I would see it, and because I now have, my career and all these other things I'm working towards, I'm like, you know what, I don't even have the time to be mad, I don't even care,
Mhm.
so there's
Mhm.
other things that I'm more focused on, and you can learn to control those type of emotions and stuff like that. So yeah, it's interesting.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think the whole concept of love kind of gets people tripped up, and especially men. I think I've talked about this in a previous post. Love is a tricky thing, and I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on this too. But I think for the most part, I'm sure that there's some similarities. I do think that generally men and women love a little differently. I think
Yeah.
men, at least from my point of view, men love in the sense of like it's very protective. It's very like sacrificial. Like I would take a bullet for you kind of thing. Like I would die for you. I do what I have to do. Women, it's almost like from what I've noticed, it's more emotional. So like they get like kind of like over invested in the other person.
Hmm.
Not so much infatuation, but it's like she just feels really good around this other guy, like around this man. And that's how she kind of interprets love. So I think the trouble comes in when the guys kind of confuse that type of love with what they're feeling. So I think when a guy is like, "Oh man, like I just want to be around her all day," like they say falling in love, it's like that's kind of the issue is when guys do that, then they lose that focus. They lose that ability to stay grounded because they're so consumed by that. And that's when I think it turns into infatuation, which is very like obsessive. Not to say that women get obsessive, but it seems in a woman's like point of view, it's almost better that it's that way, if that makes sense.
A little bit, yeah. I can't speak for the men's side and how you guys love, but
Mhm.
I do think that everybody is different though, and everybody can
Mhm.
love in different ways. But I think as women in general, we tend to be more nurturing. So
Yeah.
we want to do things, we are givers in that sense, whether
Mhm.
it's being supportive of your journey and what you're doing, or cooking for you, or doing things and taking you, like, you know what I mean, more nurturing type
Absolutely.
stuff.
Yeah.
But I think
And
that's how we love it, and definitely emotionally, yes.
mhm.
We want to hear about your problems, and we want to help fix them and do what we can, even though we have no idea what's going on.
Well, I love that you bring that up because that is super on point. Like I agree with that. I think women are very good at like calming the storm in a man's mind. Like if he has so
Mhm.
much going on, that's where your woman does come in. And
Yep.
that's one of the benefits of being with a feminine woman who's like in touch with that side of her. She can literally bring the chaos that happens up here because guys are like hardcore thinkers or very logical. So a girl can
Hmm.
like bring you back into the present moment and help you be like, okay, shit, it's not that big of a deal. I'm good. So that's one of like the massive benefits that I've noticed that women kind of inherently have. Um, I was gonna come up with a question for that. I just lost it. Oh man, it was a good question. It was about what we were talking about. Saying women are better providers. Damn, I lost it. It was a good question, and
Oh,
I
that's all
totally forgot
right.
what I was gonna ask you. Damn, it was about that exact thing. It was about fuck. Okay, yeah, here was when you said that men you want the men to kind of share their issues, share their problems. That is a hot
Yep.
topic right now in terms of like what's
Really.
popular content is like should men be vulnerable around their woman? Now
Yeah.
I've had certain opinions about that. I think mine's kind of a little bit of an unorthodox opinion about that, but I'd love to hear your point of view first before I kind of give my own.
Yeah, I think men being vulnerable and being open about what they're struggling with and what they're going through, if you feel safe with that person, I don't see why not, right? Like, I think being strong, and I've learned this myself with being a woman, I thought strong was being just putting on a mask and not dealing with my problems and putting it on the back burner and like I'll deal with it later. But what actually is strong about a male, or I think a female too, is that being vulnerable, being open, and letting yourself feel what you're feeling and talk about what you're going through, because that's the only way you're going to heal. And if you continuously bottle things up, I think that's why mental health for men is so high. And a lot of, people, especially men, are struggling with mental health, and suicide and stuff like that. It's pretty sad. So I think I think males are very, like, males who are into that and can open up and be vulnerable, I think it's important, and it's very attractive to me, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think that there is a level of intimacy that happens when you can literally be open with a partner and kind of let them inside of, hey, I'm going through this. This sucks, but here's what I'm
Yeah.
doing. So what I generally try to tell guys is because the minute you hear the word vulnerable, guys think of this like image of you're in the corner crying to your girlfriend, like
Yeah.
always like piling on these problems towards her. And like
Yeah.
that's not what being vulnerable really is. I think that's straight up just being like weak and just like being being like overly emotional. Which if you're doing that, of course she's going to be turned off by that. Like nobody likes
Yeah.
that. Even guys to a degree, right? So I think what you described is better, or what you described as healthy. I think what men should be doing is like dealing with their own problems, talking about it, but not like I don't ever want someone to frame their girlfriend as their therapist or their mom.
Yeah.
Like, hey,
I
babe,
agree.
like I'm going through this. Can you help me out? Now, she can give you some advice, but I think if you continually try to go to your girlfriend for like the fix it, the solution, she's kind of gonna lose a little bit of attraction for you because she's like, why is this guy
Yeah.
not figuring this out? Like I'm happy that he's telling me this stuff, but it doesn't seem like he's initially trying to fix it himself. And that's where I think guys
Yeah.
get into trouble is they put it all on the girl.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I was gonna say I think once it reaches a certain level of like deep shit that you need to like get
Yeah.
figured out, like it's cool to
Hmm.
like say, hey, I'm struggling, but then yeah, definitely go see a professional
Hmm.
with that if it's a consistent conversation or a consistent, topic that you guys have. So
Hmm. Yeah,
yeah.
I think it's good though, because there's people that say never be vulnerable in front of your girl, like don't ever show emotions. And like I get what they're saying when they say that, but
Yeah,
I think that there is a balance. Like you don't have
I
to
do.
be a freaking crybaby in front of your
Yeah.
girlfriend, but to be completely stoic like 100% of the time, it's kind of a little unrealistic, especially if you're very, very busy guy and you have a lot of stress going on in your life. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think there's anything wrong personally with like if you have something happen and you want to let your girlfriend know what's going on, say, hey, this just happened, but here's how I'm fixing it. I always tell guys to
Yeah.
frame it as I'm making it, I'm fixing it, I'm making something happen, not just like, oh, woe is me. It's like life is terrible kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I like that. There was something I was gonna say and I had it in mind and now I forget.
Happened to me, just
Um,
happened to me too.
God, like what is it about today? Hump day, man. We're getting
Long
over it.
day.
Oh, it has been a long day. Well, hopefully it comes back to me. I honestly can't think of it off the top of my head right now. Dang. It
Yeah,
was a good point.
we could circle back if it comes back to you.
Yeah, let's do that. Hopefully it circles back. You never know with my brain.
Hey, it's late. It happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so we can kind of talk about like I think one of the reasons because I mentioned marriage before and like why that's seems to be failing at like a like massive scale. Um, I think it kind of ties to the point we made a little bit ago about love and about like rushing into relationships. I think one of the reasons, and I'll always be super accountable, especially for men, like I always put everything on the guy if you're not taking the vetting process of a relationship seriously, then more than likely something like that is going to happen to you. So, like, for example, when you're talking to a girl, they call that like the talking phase, right? Where you're figuring
Hmm.
out who this person is, what their interests are, what their values are like. If you're not careful and you just do the whole Disney like phrase that's out there, just follow your heart, right? And you just do it
Yeah.
instead of actually thinking about, well, does this actually make sense for me, for her, for both of us? And you actually use logic there. If you just listen to your emotions, it might not always work out. And I think that's where people get into that issue of, hey, 10 years from now, we figured, hey, we're just not that compatible. We thought we were, or maybe it's 5 years. I don't know what it could be. But I don't think enough people take time to really get to know the other person. They just kind of like all guns
Yeah.
blazing, just full steam ahead. So I think that's a
Yeah.
big issue. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I think yeah, that's real. I've seen a lot of people rush into things, especially when you're young. But I think with that is that there a lot of people are afraid of being alone. And I think that people are
True.
afraid that they can't do any better than what they have currently.
Hmm.
Because it's scary. It is scary being alone with your thoughts, sitting in day and night, like dealing with yourself. But
Yeah.
there's also positives to that, right? Going back into figuring out your why and stuff. But
Hmm.
essentially, I think it's just people are afraid of being alone.
Hmm.
And that they maybe can't do better and like what am I going to do, and they're relying on that person to build a life with, and it may not make sense logically, right? Because
Hmm.
in their heart they're like, oh, this is what I want, and this is what they think they want at that time. It maybe 5 years down the road it might not be, because people
Hmm.
change, especially when you're young. My values have changed even in the last 3 years. My goals have changed. So many different
Yeah.
things change over time. um and I don't know, I think people will get lost in the realization of like, do we know, like, is it the right person or is it the right time? Like, I
Mm.
don't know if, like, what are your thoughts on that? I actually just read a, well, I wouldn't say read a book, but I listened to the ebook by Steve Harvey, Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man. and he had so many interesting points of like how you guys think and what you guys do in terms of relationships. So I'm curious to see
Mm.
like, is it the right time or is it the right person?
So you mean in terms of like
Like
which one
marriage,
matters?
when you want to like settle down with somebody, like is it in the
Yeah.
spur of the moment when you feel like you have your life together and it's whatever girls in your life at that time, or is it you make,
Mm.
if you find somebody that you know have the same goals and stuff, you make it work, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. No, I know what you're saying. I mean, for me personally, I'm just talking myself. I think it would be best, it'd be best to have a little bit of both, to be honest. Like you're set up financially, like as a man, like you got your shit together, you know what you're doing, you have a foundation, and you know, man, this girl like lines up perfectly with what what I'm doing, and we complement each other very well. So I'd like to say a bit of both, but if I had to say one or the other, I mean, I think time plays a big factor into it, if I'm being real. Like, because I think if
Okay.
you're if you're putting in all this effort to make a relationship work, and as a man you have like absolutely no clue where you're going, well,
Hmm.
I like if you want to be like the leader and like the, like the quote unquote head of the household, good father and all that stuff, how are you going to do that if you don't even have your own stuff? Like you're not leading your own life first. So I've always kind of approached it from that perspective. I do think like, yeah, even if you have all that, you shouldn't just marry the first girl that gives you attention. But I
Yep.
think that you need that stuff first, especially if you want to have a healthy marriage. And she's not like, especially when it comes to like the income stuff and like making sure that you
Mhm.
guys are splitting that or how that looks. Like you want to make sure you're solid first, 100%.
Yeah, you make really good points. I like that because I think the same. Like, I think a lot of women need to think more like men in terms of that. I think us as women, typically, in my experiences in the past, that we jump right in on the person because we get excited and that we tend to fall in love faster than men do.
Sure.
And we will just fit that person in our life no matter what, because women tend to like, but it's past history, right? We were meant to be, mothers, stay at home, but things are
Hmm.
changing now. And I think, you know, it should be the same too for a woman. Like, are you set financially? Do you have career goals? Do you have things outside of a person that you have set in stone? And then once that right person comes along at the right time, then yeah, you
Hmm.
make it work.
Yeah. I do agree with you. I think that a woman should have at least some kind of base of self-improvement, whether that's like, and she doesn't have to be a millionaire. I don't think like,
Right, right. Yeah,
and this
just
is,
something.
yeah, something going on, like some kind of passion, some type of
Yeah.
something that you're doing. And I do think this is a great time to bring this up because that is another thing that I think is thrown out there a bunch of times in like the different content um that's out there. I think talking too about the differences of men and women, and specifically what men find attractive and what women find attractive in men, because I think those two things are pretty different. Because
Yeah.
I believe that men and women are like complements. We're not the same, but we do complement each other well. So I'm wondering, at least from your perspective, I'll start there with being desirable, like for a man. Like what makes a man desirable in your eyes?
I think for me, I think what makes a man desirable is their work ethic, their goals, if they're aligned with the similar passions as myself. I think things like loyalty and a sense of feeling protected, is definitely attractive. Like, yeah, you got to be physically attracted to that person, but if I'm looking for a husband, those are things that I'm going to be looking for. Like, do you have a good career? Are you set? Do you have goals? Are you self-motivated? Are you a hard worker? Those are definitely probably the top attractions that I would say I would go for.
Mm. Yeah, I can definitely agree with that in terms of just based on what I've done, like in terms of research and just like the girls I've talked to. I could definitely agree with that. I think for me, like speaking for what men typically look for in women, it's not the opposite, but there are some things that I think are a little different in terms of what they want. So guys more or less want somebody, like you mentioned before, more nurturing, someone that can kind of like help them emotionally, even like kind of like soothe their soul in a sense, as corny as that sounds. But
Yeah.
kind of like helping them out. It's, you can say it's cooking, cleaning, stuff like that. That's like kind of very basic stuff. I think that
Yep.
that's, of course, like that's like something that you would want. But I think really men look for a solid support system, like a girl that can like literally be the one to kind of help him in his journey and what he's doing in life. So I think I do agree with you. I think for men though, they don't generally look at a girl's career, I think, as hard as women do for men. Because I think, like for example, a girl working in Starbucks or a girl who's like a movie star, to a guy, he doesn't really care that much. Like if she's
Yeah.
making $1 million or $1,000 a month, like it's not that big of a deal as long as she's like physically attractive and she's like, she has her stuff together, like emotionally. I think a guy will kind of make that sacrifice. But for women, I think it's like totally different. Like his income doesn't, it's not everything, but it matters. Like if he's in Starbucks, not really doing anything, and a guy who's like a multimillionaire entrepreneur, it's like, wow, that guy's way more attractive. So I'm wondering, like, do you think that's accurate, or is that kind of just like you think that's not true?
Um, I do think it's true. That's a tough question because I think for women it's different. Like for a woman
Mhm.
who is successful and already has and makes really good money, she might not be like, oh my God, I need the entrepreneur who's a millionaire. And she might be okay with that man who is maybe just in the average income and he's working towards something though and supporting him along the way. I think that's something that people would be open to. But there are a lot of women out there who definitely chase after people with money because it's more of a financial stability than
Mhm.
really anything. So yeah, you do have a good point.
Well, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's not so much the money, it's like the security. Like if a guy has
Exactly. Yeah.
resources, it doesn't matter if it's like $1 million, $100 million. It's just the fact that like if things needed to be taken care of, he got it. Like he's good. Like
Yeah.
don't worry about it. He'll take care of it. And I think this is where some women find themselves almost in like a tricky position because like the more successful that she becomes financially or whatever the case is, it could be hard. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a woman, so it's like hard for me to say, but I think it's harder to kind of find like that ideal guy because like if a girl becomes a millionaire, for example, and women generally they date up, like they don't date guys that are like, yeah, he's whatever, he's like a flipping burgers at McDonald's. Like they don't usually do that. So like if
Yeah.
she's a millionaire, what's up from that? A billionaire? And like how many
Yeah. You're
how many
very
guys are there?
limited at that point. You're very limited.
Yeah,
Because yeah, we do want to date up because we want I like for me, I want someone who's gonna push me and motivate me and like continuously make me a better person. I
sure.
don't want to stay stagnant. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's tough. I don't know. I'm not a millionaire, so not yet.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Well, because there are couples that do make it work. Like I don't know if you follow, you know who Alex Hormozy is?
I don't know. Mm-mm.
He's like this really successful entrepreneur. He's like multi-millionaire, like really successful dude. But then his wife is also very successful, like in her own right. She's millionaire, does her thing, whatever. Somehow they make it work. I'm assuming that he's probably like it's like his brand and she's kind of a part of it or something. I'm not exactly sure, but
Yeah,
I would assume that in some way she does kind of see him as like a good leader, a actual like masculine figure. Um,
yeah.
so like what would you so like, I'll give you an example. I'll just like throw out like a hypothetical for you. Let's
Okay.
say you are like a really successful multi-millionaire, independent, like entrepreneur. Would you date a guy who's well not I can't say date, I'll say marry because that's a little bit more like heavy with the commitment. Would you marry a guy who's content with being like a starving artist type where he's just like playing guitar, does it for fun, not really serious about making it a career, but he's just like, I'm cool, I just follow my heart? Or the guy who's like really successful or is like striving to be successful, he's just not. quite there yet. He's like on the path.
Probably picking the guy who's on the path because I think like I mean money is great and all and it definitely gives you resources to a lot of freedom and life back, but it gets
Mhm.
lonely.
Sure.
And I'd rather spend, again, if I'm a multimillionaire, hypothetically, like I'd rather spend my time with that person and helping him and supporting him on his
Hmm.
journey to that path. Like I think that would be way more exciting than somebody who doesn't really, I mean, they're passionate about the guitar or whatever, but if they don't have goals or a plan to get there,
Hmm.
I feel like I'd be like hauling ass trying to get that person on board. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm probably picking the guy who's just on his way there
Hmm.
and has a plan and works. Like I don't care how much money you make as long as you're working hard again and you have a plan to get there.
Hmm.
I'm just again, as a female, we like to be the support system. So
Right. Well, that's why I think it's so important for men to have that vision, because if they don't know where they're trying to set their life up or where they want to go, it's like it's hard for a woman to really be on board with that. It's hard for her to really like trust your judgment. If you're like, for example, if I'm saying, "Hey, let's go here, or let's go eat at this restaurant," or I'm driving a car, for example, and I make a left turn, it's like
yeah,
it doesn't seem that sure because like I don't even know where I want to go. Like if we were in the car together and I'm like, maybe we'll make a left, maybe we'll make a right. I don't really know. Like no one in
yeah,
the car is gonna feel safe because I don't know. Like the
no,
driver doesn't know what the hell he's doing. So
yeah,
I think that's spot on.
it's a good point.
Like you have to as a man like just have that foundation. So I preach this like almost in every video, like have that solid foundation as a man, like before you even think about entertaining women, at least on a long-term basis, because you're confused, it's only going to lead to her being confused. If you're like, I don't really know, maybe we'll whatever, it's not going to go over well. And like the only reason I know this is because I was the other way. I used to think that way. I'm like, okay, girls first, then I'll figure
Yep.
myself out. But it doesn't work like that because they're
No.
always going to be turned off when a guy's like putting them above anything else he's doing.
Yeah, I agree. We all live and learn though. I think especially when you're young, like nobody knows really what's going on. I mean, we're all
Yeah.
just kind of like faking it till you make it. And but
Hmm.
like then speaking now that we're older, we learn from these experiences and we can share them with other people and
Hmm.
hope that they understand and take advice, but
Yeah.
you never know. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, like it's good to know when you're young and go through it young, but unfortunately, I think a lot of guys learn this stuff late and they're mid 30s. Some guys I know that reach out to me are in like their mid 40s, even later, and they still don't know this stuff. I had a guy actually, so this is an
Wow.
interesting situation. I had a guy reach out to me probably 6 months ago, like a little bit ago. He's mid 30s, almost 40 now. He's from an Indian culture, so he moved from India to America, and out in India, they actually have arranged marriages. That's kind of the way that their culture is. So him and his wife were basically put together from, I guess their parents picked them. I don't know how that worked, but they were arranged. And dude had no idea about like masculine feminine dynamics, how to be a good leader, how to be confident. He had no clue. And as a result, his wife kind of, manipulated him, like didn't really treat him with respect, kind of
Yeah.
walked all over him. And that sucks because that's an interesting case because he was in an arranged marriage. But I think a lot of guys find themselves in that spot because they never had like a guy teach them like, hey, bro, this is how stuff is. Like, this is how stuff works. Like, guys lack that masculine
Yeah.
role model to let them know. What do you think about that?
That's yeah, that's very interesting. I like I don't know what I feel about that. Like I just I'm curious as to why, you know, these experiences are happening and why it's getting worse and why females are having to be more masculine and be more independent and why things are shifting. Like it's crazy to think like just generational wise back in the day, like this is how things were and now things are like
Yeah.
doing a 360.
Yeah.
Um
Hmm.
it's a very interesting topic.
Yeah,
I don't have an answer for
sure. I
like
don't.
why.
Yeah.
It's so confusing to me, but
Hmm. I think there's a lot of reasons. I mean, I can't say definitively like this was the thing that did it, but I think that it was kind of a slow burn over time. Right. I was on this podcast with a previous guest, and he was talking about like our parents and their generation, kind of what they had to go through. So like there's a saying right now, well, I guess not right now, but there's a saying that says hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times, and it's like a cycle continues. So basically what that means is like guys who become weak and that they don't know how to lead, they're not put together self-development wise. They potentially get into positions of power making society worse because they don't know how to efficiently lead themselves, which makes everybody
yeah,
worse and everybody just less off. Like mental health is insanely bad right now with just how people are dealing with um, substance abuse, violence. Like it's like all-time highs. And we're kind of in the era of like we were in good times for a while. Now it's slowly kind of getting into like shit, about to hit the fan. So I
yeah,
think I can't say this is 100% solution, but again, I'll always be the one to like hold myself and like other men accountable. I think we let it get to that point where you have all these people saying, "Oh, well, men are women and women are men and they can do this and they can do." It's like if guys were just like, "Nah, like this is how it's supposed to be. These are my boundaries." I don't think it would ever get to that point. Personally, I think guys like have to be a little bit more assertive when it comes to just the nonsense that exists in like most of media and pop culture. But that's what I think. You know, I'm obviously a little biased, but that's kind of my two thoughts on it.
yeah. No, you have a good point. I think what you're doing is great, and the holding each other accountable is huge. I think women should be doing it to ourselves and our friends as well.
I agree.
Like we're in a different era and there's things are changing and I think everybody just kind of falls back into old patterns and
Hmm.
nobody's holding each other accountable because it's just like, oh, this is just what it is. So, no, I
Yep.
think that's huge. And again, I love what you're doing. So, I'm
Hmm.
always happy to hop on here and chat about it.
Yeah. And I appreciate it. I think women too. Like I don't discard women as far as being accountable at all. Like I definitely hold them to the same standard. And it's sometimes like I'll talk about men being accountable, and then I have like comments of guys who are like, "What about women? They do X, Y, Z." It's like, bro, I'm not saying they're innocent, man. I'm not saying that at all.
Yeah,
I'm just not worried about that because like I can't control what women do. Like I can only control me. And
right.
they're only going to follow what we do. So it's like, bro, that's where it should start. Um,
Yep.
but
Agreed.
since we're talking about this, I love that we can kind of, I want to do a little experiment. So
Yeah.
I want to do like a red flag experiment. And what I want to do is like, I want to do both. So we could start with like red flags for women, and like we'll both give our opinion on that, like from my perspective and for yours. And then we'll do one for men, and then we'll go both ways.
Okay.
So I'll let you start for women. Like, what do you think in terms of like guys see as red flags in women? What would you say your like top five are?
Top five. Oh, I haven't even given this a thought before, but I would say red flags are, man, a girl who parties every weekend,
Yep.
um, low self-worth, um, I wouldn't, they don't have to be, a millionaire six-figure earner, but like not having a sense of career and just kind of like doing nothing. I think
Hmm.
laziness, clinginess are red flags. I don't know. I think those would be the top that I can think of right now off the top of my head. What are yours?
Yeah. I definitely like those. I'd say I would add on to like the laziness is just a girl who's almost like a leech. She kind of just wants to take things from you, as in like, give me
Yeah.
money, give me your debit card, give me all this crap. It's like,
Yes.
bro, like stay away from girls like that. They just want to suck you
Yes.
dry. Like, yeah, I agree
Mm-hmm.
100%. So I actually have a list I wrote down. So for me, party girl is definitely on my list of like top five, just worst. Because I think anyone can tell you that a girl who's consistent, and guys too, that are consistently going to clubs like every weekend, three, four times a week, doesn't always lead to the best decisions, not usually the best kind of character. So I would say like stay away.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a huge red flag. Just from experience, like those people are just going out to get some ass. Like, what is the
yep,
benefit of going out to a bar and getting sloppy drunk? Because you want some
100%.
ass.
And that's like it's funny because that's literally what it is. And people will get mad when some guys have boundaries. It's like, hey, if you're dating me and you have a girl who's consistently wants to go out without you, like, oh, let me go out with my single friends. Let me wear my, booty high shorts and like just do my hair,
My
look all
bralette and
good.
jeans.
Yeah, and like just look great. It's like, hey, we know what happens at clubs. And like to me,
Hmm.
I can't speak for every guy, but I think most guys would agree. That's almost a sign of like you don't take the relationship that serious. Because if you're constantly
Yeah,
going
I
out like
agree.
that, hey, I mean, if we want like ask me to go, I'll go with you, or we'll just do something else together. So I think that's almost a
Yeah,
sign of just disrespect, honestly, kind of in my eyes.
I agree. I agree.
Even if guys do that, like even if a guy does that to a girl and she's a homebody, she likes watching movies and chilling, which is something I like to do. But if the dude's always going out without her and he's like with his boys, and he's probably hitting on girls, girls hitting on him. It's like
Yeah,
the same thing.
it is. Yeah.
So I agree with that one for sure. The other one I have here is kind of like the extreme, but it's definitely a red flag. Like this is kind of obvious, but any like man hating like extreme feminist who has like blue
Ugh.
hair and piercings, like yeah, bro, get away from her because you can't fix her. She got to fix herself.
Yeah, yeah. You have a point there.
That's a big one. That is a
Yeah,
big one.
you're always gonna butt heads with that person. Always.
Yes, 100%. I've already gotten a lot of flack from certain blue-haired feminists with my content, but hey, it is what it is.
You can't please everybody, unfortunately, nowadays. So,
No, you can't. Especially them. Especially them.
mm-mm.
I have a third one here, and I'd love to get your take on this. So, constantly is in contact with their ex. And this is something that I used to not do myself, but I used to be involved with. Like I was kind of dating this girl who would like consistently bring her ex up or compare what I did to her ex or even text him like right in front of me. And I'd be like, the hell are you doing? Like, come on now. It's just super, super just like disrespectful. Um,
Wow.
and I
Yeah.
think if that happens, like I'm not saying you need to like be like very immature, like say bad things about your ex and do all this kind of stuff. Just simply keep it civil, but like you have your boundary with you and that
Yeah.
other person. I think that that's kind of a big one. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's huge. I think, yeah, that's a huge red flag. I mean, there's a reason why that person is talking consistently with that person and thinking about them, talking about them. Like, one, they're still connected in some sort of way, or two, they're just not properly dealing with trauma from that person. So, like, those,
Mhm.
neither ones are good either. So, like,
Yeah,
you can't move on if you're still in the past with a person that used to be in your life. Like, I'm big on, I don't think an ex or somebody that you were in love with or in a relationship with should ever be just your friend. Like that's not a, I don't think
I
it's a
agree.
thing
Yep.
because like no, just no. I don't have any other words but just no.
Yeah, I have a very big problem when two people who not only are at one point we're both attracted to each other, but like we're having a relationship and like we're having sex and all this. Like you can't
Yeah,
just be friends with
you
that
can't
person.
just be friends. No.
You
It
can't.
never works out. I can promise you that.
I agreed 100%. 100%.
Like it sucks, unfortunately. Like you know that there's some type of love attachment that person used to be in your life, but you've got to move on. Like there's no like you're just holding on by a thread at that point. It's
Mm,
just, yeah, I don't think it's healthy.
yeah. One of my mentors always said about getting back with an ex. He was like, "You've seen that movie already. You know how this goes. Why would you go see
Yeah,
the same movie twice? Like go see another one."
literally. Yeah.
It's like you already
That's
know
a
how it is.
really great point.
It's just, and I believe people can change, but I think
I do
that your
too.
dynamic will always kind of remain unless you guys go through some like ridiculous transformation and she
Hmm.
grows insanely a lot, you change a lot, and it
But I
aligns,
think
which,
that takes years
yeah,
of
it's pretty
development.
rare.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
think that's pretty rare. But yeah, I
Agreed.
think that's a big one. Another one I have here is daddy issues, which
Ooh.
is a huge one. Like a girl that goes, maybe she doesn't have a good relationship with her father, or she's doesn't never met her father. She's never, never had a good relationship at all, or the men that she does have in her life have been abusive, or they've
Hmm.
been neglectful or avoidant or whatever it could be. I don't think that one's like, and again, I think every girl's different. I think some girls can like actually live a healthy life, even though they've maybe had a negative experience. But for the most part, and I think generally, if you have issues with a father figure, then that's going to teach you how you view men in your own life. And so
Yeah,
she gets with a
100%.
guy, she might carry over some of that trauma into the relationship, into another man, and think, oh, well, he's just going to treat me
Yeah.
like this guy, which is, if you don't deal with it, it could be a big issue.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Again, if you don't take it, the trauma and heal and, get better, it definitely can resonate in a relationship for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it goes for men too. Like if a man has a bad relationship with his mother, for example, it's the same kind of thing. Like he's has a negative association with women, and that will show up
Yeah,
in his relationship. So it does kind of go both ways. Um, but yeah, I think that's something that every human being should deal with if they had like parental issues.
for sure.
And the last one I have here is one that I guess you could say is a little controversial. I know some people have a really big issue with this, but I'm just giving my honest thoughts about what I think are red flags. And
Yeah.
I have here high body count. Now, I know that some people might get triggered by that, but if I'm just being honest, and I'm not saying men are excluded from this because I don't think men need to have like a ridiculously high body count either. I don't think it's good for either person. But generally, what I've noticed, it just the people that I grew up with, friends that I had, if you've been with a lot of people, I'm talking about men. Like if men have been a lot with a lot of women, they generally kind of lose that sense of intimacy. They don't really have like a they treat sex as like a thing. It's not really meaningful anymore. It's hard to
Yep.
to pair bond. Same for women. So there was actually a study that I saw that, and this is actually true, that when women have sex, there's a chemical, I think it's oxytocin that gets released. Well, I think that happens for both people, but for women, since they're way more like in tune with their emotions, it affects them that much more. So when a woman has sex, she actually gets more attached to a guy,
Yep.
but the guy actually gets a little bit less attached. And not like that's not like an opinion. That's just like what I read in this article.
Yeah.
So he doesn't get as like, as attached as a girl would. So a girl, let's say, has hundreds or a lot of partners, that
Yeah.
process of feeling that attachment, that pair bonding, I think gets diminished a lot if she's continually just giving it out to whoever. It's hard, and there's a lot of studies I've saw that like they link that to not having a strong long-term relationship as
Connection.
well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what
No,
it,
I could agree with that because that's
Mhm.
that's why friends with benefits never works out.
No,
Stupid and nobody should do it.
I agree.
But no, I think that is a good point. For us women, it does mean something to us, and like you should be able to connect with your partner. It should be making love. It shouldn't be just like a thing that you
Hmm.
do and it's just like casual. Like I don't know,
Yeah.
to me it's not just casual. Like I think it's special.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is huge. But I do think on the men's side too, it is like from a woman's perspective, it is gross as well.
Hmm.
But I don't know. There's so many different perspectives on that with men and females body counts. It's
Hmm.
it's kind of silly. But no, you
Yeah.
have a good point.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. And in general, I think like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't. I don't know if this all women think this way, but I think if a guy generally has a little bit more experience, not saying he's like a complete like man whore or anything, but if he just happens to have like a decent body count or he's been with a good amount of women, if he's a high value man and is like really working on himself and he's masculine and whatnot, I'm not too sure women would be like, okay, no, like not even like I'm not even gonna think about it. But if that's like if the roles were reversed and if it was a girl who was like really high body count and the guy was looking, it's like, that might be a deal breaker. Now, is that a double
Hmm.
standard? Yeah, it definitely is. But
Yeah.
I think that's just kind of how we kind of view, and that's why men and women I think are different, is because we almost view um things like that differently, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's definitely a disconnect. I don't think it's a huge ordeal though. Going to your point on like
Hmm.
make or breaking a person.
Sure.
Like I don't know if it should be a conversation or it shouldn't be a conversation. Like do we really need to know that
Right.
specifics about a person? You know,
Yeah,
like
for
is that
sure.
important? I don't know, but it still could be a red flag. So yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I think if you I think if you have to ask, then that's probably not a good sign. Like if you're that
Yeah.
concerned, you might just
Yeah.
want to be like, hey, out of sight, out of mind, don't worry about it. That's kind of my philosophy. Like, I'll only
Yeah,
ask
mine
if
too.
you're bringing it up and you want to know mine. Like, it's not a big deal, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's one of those things that you're probably better off not saying.
Yeah. I think in my head I'm like I'd rather just not know and like
Yeah.
focus about like more positive things, but
I
I'm sure that
agree.
comes up in conversations with people though. I know
Sure.
it's probably have, so
I've seen online where some people said that's like the first thing that guys will ask, like, hey, what's your body count? Like immediately off
yeah.
jump. And it's like, dude, that's kind of a hell of a way to start a conversation.
Yeah, I'm like what?
But
If
yeah,
a guy
that's
asked me that, like that was one of the first questions that they asked me, I'd be like, "You're a walking red flag. Goodbye."
pretty much. Yeah. I mean, that's a fair point because I mean, I wouldn't think because like if that's the first question you ask, then what are you looking at this girl for? It's straight up sex, right?
Exactly. Like,
That's it.
is that really all you want to know? Like, what?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree. I think that that's something that both people could probably keep private. If it comes up, maybe get
Yeah.
into it, but yeah, not always the best thing to discuss, especially on a first date.
Yeah. Great.
Cool, cool. So those are my five. I mean, those are all the ones I wrote down. Um, yeah. What do you think about that list in terms of red flags?
I think those are pretty accurate. I like those. I mean, it seems like a majority of them were kind of similar to what I had said too. So
Hmm.
I'm glad I'm at least on the right track.
Yeah.
Because we never know what men are thinking or what men look for that are actually red flags. We just
Hmm.
um it's funny because when I was younger, I used to think that, wearing the slutty clothes and being the party girl is how you would get a man. I swear to God. And it's so
Yeah.
funny, like talking about it now and knowing what I know now. And it's just hilarious. Like we literally think that as young females that like that's what men want. Oh, we want it to like just look good and like be the fun party girl because like why not? Like
Hmm.
I don't know. It's funny to think back
Yeah.
and now the conversations we're having now about like what green flags and what red flags are and the whole time they were actually a red flag.
Hmm. Well, the thing is, I think a lot of girls get told that maybe early on.
Yeah.
And yeah, you will get guys' attention. There's no doubt about that. But
Hmm.
it's the kind of quality guys' attention that you're getting is what matters.
Exactly.
Because you'll
Yep.
probably get the dude who's straight up just looking for sex. He's just looking for a good time, just like you are.
Yep.
It's the same
Yep.
thing. And most likely the kind of guy who's higher quality, he doesn't want to go sleep around, whatever. He's probably not at a bar or club like that
No.
on a consistent basis, at least. So
Yeah.
it's all about kind of what the vibe you're putting out because you're going to attract that same thing.
Yeah. I think that's a really good topic though, because I think just from friends and relationships in the past, like people think that that's where you go to find a girl or a
Yeah.
wife or a husband. Like
Right.
people genuinely think going out every single weekend, like that's where you're gonna find somebody you're gonna spend the rest of your life with. And that
Uh,
like mind boggles me because like why?
mhm.
I don't know. Like there's people who literally their late 20s, 30s, 40s even like that's where they're
Yeah.
going to find like yeah, maybe they're there to find ass, but there are some people who are genuinely there to find somebody they want to date.
Hmm.
And I don't know, I'm curious to see your thoughts on that because I
Hmm.
just don't understand it. Like why people I guess I don't know. Like cuz there's so many limited things that you can do, I feel like especially in the city like
Hmm.
that's where everyone's going. That's where you're going to meet a lot of people. And like there's online too, but it's like, how do you meet somebody outside of that?
Hmm. Yeah, that's always a question that I get sometimes is like guys will ask me, well, where do you find girls, man? Are they at like online dating? Is it bars, nightclubs, whatever? And I kind of always have the same opinion when it comes to that because I look at those things like meat grinders. Like everybody goes to that stuff. You're gonna get the same quality kind of girls and kind of guys that go to that stuff every weekend. Could you find some good, decent people? Sure. But it's not like the majority. Like you're not gonna get like successful lawyers and doctors and like really high class people that go do that every weekend. So
Yep.
if that's what you're looking for, you're probably looking in the wrong spots. So I think like the two worst places actually to find like a serious person is online dating and in a bar. Because again,
I
it's
agree.
like you're hitting open waters. Like you're basically like you're in the ocean and you're getting just whatever the hell you pull up. And most likely
Yep.
it's not a good thing. So I would say where to find a partner. I mean, it kind of comes down to just your lifestyle. So for example,
Yeah.
like for me, like I go to the gym and like I know you go to the gym too, like consistently.
Yep.
Seeing somebody in the gym, most likely you're going to find somebody with a similar value, a similar mindset because they're working on their health, they're working on their fitness.
Yep.
So I look at it like a sales call. It's funny because sales and dating is like so similar, but when I
Ah, very
prospect,
similar.
it's literally like identical when you really think about it.
It
Um,
is.
but when I prospect, for example, for like a client, I'm looking at his profile thinking, okay, what does he do? Is he into self-improvement? Does he read? Does he work out? Et cetera, et cetera. And if I see if it's a good match, I'll message him and I'll reach out. So like same thing applies for
Mhm.
dating. If a girl's in the gym or I don't know, if I'm checking out a book at the library because I like to read and I see a girl
Mhm.
reading a book, that's like an indicator in my mind, a green flag that that girl is probably somebody that I would vibe with. So then
Yeah.
you basically go for the approach. You just say, "Hey, what's up? Like, I see you in here. What's going
Yep.
on?" So I don't think that there's like a specific, like, I think guys almost feel like there's a some kind of factory that just churns out like high quality women and you just go here and then that's like where they're going to be. It's anywhere. Like you could go to the
Mhm.
park, you could go get gas, you could go to the gym, you could go to the library. Like it's basically anywhere. You just have to be on the lookout for the kind of women that you see yourself with in like a serious relationship with. And then it just comes down to making the approach. So I think
Yep.
it's really, as long as you're in your ideal lifestyle doing what you want, I think you find those people in those kind of environments.
Along the way. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. To add to your point too, like even traveling, like I do a lot of
Yeah.
traveling. I've met a lot of people on places that I've been just like randomly. And it like it's
Mhm.
awesome because you're like, oh, you're into the same things as me. You're on the same plane or you're in the
Exactly.
same spot. Like, what do you like to do? So I think like you
Hmm.
said, it's if you're like what you're doing in your lifestyle, something that you love, like someone's gonna pop in there eventually if
Yeah.
you're doing the right things. So yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the best way to be because ideally you want to invite somebody into your lifestyle, especially like as a man, like you want to invite her into your life and what you guys are doing so you guys can like do that stuff together.
Together.
You could be a
Yeah.
part of it. So some guys would hear that and be like, "Oh, well, you're just leaving it up to chance. Like, how do I know if I'm ever gonna meet a girl?" It's like it's not chance when you're actually taking action. Like, for example, if like there's a girl, I don't know, she's like in the middle of the park and she's just sitting there by herself, if I'm attracted to her, then like that's up to me to go make the approach. Like it's not gonna just happen. It's not just gonna fall in my lap. If she approaches
Yeah.
me, different story, but most likely that she's not, because girls typically don't do that first, at least.
Facts.
So
It's
you
yeah.
have to.
Yeah, you've got to be very confident person and know what you want as a female. Like speaking for myself to like go and do that. I've done it probably once or twice in my entire life. And this is
Yeah.
as of recently that I've gone up to a man and said something first, but I like
Mhm.
we want like speaking of, like we want the man to come up and say hi to us. Like
Exactly.
we want that.
Hmm.
We don't want to have to be the ones to say hi. And I think it's cool though. I think it's cool either way. But yeah,
Hmm.
typically we want the male to come say something first.
Yeah. This is what's
We want
interesting
them to notice us.
for sure. No, I agree 100%. This is what I've noticed. It's interesting. Like, so I've had some girls approach me, just, I'm not gonna brag or anything, but like I've had some girls like come up to me and like initiate that stuff. And I've always noticed, like sometimes it goes well, sometimes it's whatever. But what I've
Hmm.
generally noticed is the girls that I generally find like the most interesting are the ones that I approach first. I don't know if that's because I like a girl that's confident, like a girl that walks up to me and she's like introduces herself, like, hey, that's cool. Like, I'll definitely give you the time of day. I want to see what you're about. But I don't know. It's almost like I feel like in a guy's perspective, a girl that's like even a little shy or timid in a sense is like kind of attractive because they're guys like, oh, I want to get to know
I want
her.
to get to know you. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to make her feel
Yeah, that makes
safe.
sense.
So I don't know if that's like just how it is. But just in my experience, like the girls that have typically approached me first, like they were cool and it was a nice little vibe, but it wasn't, I didn't see anything like serious with that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. That makes total sense.
Not to say that it
Mm.
can't, not to say that it can happen,
Yeah, right.
but
But I feel
yeah,
like typically though, yeah, you have a good point.
because I think like what what the number one, I mean, you can kind of answer this for me, but I think the number one thing that women are attracted to and just straight up like just attraction is just straight up just confidence, like a guy that knows what he
A
wants
guy who will
and
take
goes after it
charge and do, yeah, dominance for sure.
100%. So like to see that from a woman kind of being a little bit aggressive and a little bit like
Yes. Oh shit.
dominating, I guess it's like, oh damn.
Yeah, it could be intimidating too. Like,
Yeah.
holy shit, this girl's super confident and she went up. Yeah, know what I mean? Like it could
Mhm.
be intimidating. I don't know from a male's perspective, but it could
Mhm.
sometimes it could be intimidating.
Yeah. Some guys will get, so this is what usually happens is like guys will get a little more introverted in that situation. They'll get shy and they'll kind of be a little bit more laid back when really you have to you almost have to be a little bit more aggressive than she is, a little bit more confident than she is, which for some guys is kind of hard to do. So
Hmm.
I'm not gonna say it never works. It could, but I think
Yeah.
in general you're better off just making approaches as a guy, like just going for it, just doing it. Because that way, like she kind of matches your energy. You're not really matching hers as much. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree.
yeah. Yeah. We can kind of cover the other way too if you want, like the red flags
Yeah.
for men and kind of just flip it and do that if you want.
Yeah. Let's do it. Red flags for men. I honestly think they're identical to a female. Like a guy who's partying every weekend, huge red flag. That's the number one red flag for me because, like, one, I know why you're out and I know what you're doing. So,
Yeah.
bye. Um, Two, I think a lazy man. Again, if he's not hardworking, he's not working towards something, that's a huge red flag. I a pretty big red flag for me too is a guy who needs a lot of attention. I
Hmm.
want that person to be working on other things other than me. I don't want his sole focus to be on me and what I'm doing and what I'm drinking and what I'm eating. Like who cares? You know,
Right.
go work or something. I don't know.
Hmm.
Um, Clinginess, I think to an extent, like I like a man who, you know, is into his woman and like does certain things, but not so attached at the hip. Kind of having space. So a guy that's clingy would probably be a red flag. Another red flag is a guy who I don't know. This isn't as big, but like just a douche, like a guy who is like too confident. Like he knows he's the
Yeah.
shit. He know he can get girls. He know he's got this, or who flaunts his money and what he has in front of people. I
Hmm.
think is a red flag too. I could probably go on and on, but I'll keep it at those top five.
Yeah, I like those. I definitely agree. I think, yeah, I would agree with all those actually. I think as far as the cockiness thing goes, I think that's when it can, because there's a fine line between being confident and being cocky. I think cockiness is when you're kind of compensating because you don't really have what you think you have. You're just boasting
Hmm.
because you want people to think that you do. Confidence is
Yep.
just being like, I have it, so I don't really need to like scream and shout, I have it because you already
Right.
know.
Throw it in your face. Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Agree.
For sure. Yeah. I think if I were to make a list for dudes and from a girl's perspective, I would say laziness absolutely is like number one. I think if you're a dude who has no ambition, like just forget about it. Like go work on yourself. Um,
Yep.
that's one. Another one could be just I this one is kind of a controversial one, I guess there's some guys, but I think lack of being like a gentleman. I don't know if that's like
Cool.
being
I
a
like
simp.
that.
I don't know if guys will flame me and say that's being a simp, but literally like I don't mean like completely like, taking care of everything and making sure he's always good, but literally like um oh wait a minute, this is red flags. Never mind. That was probably a green flag. Never
A
mind.
guy that's a gentleman, that is a green flag,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, that's a green flag. Wrong list. So I guess the
That's it.
opposite of
Yeah.
that would be just like someone who's like completely selfish, doesn't give a shit about the
Yes.
girl. He's all about himself and nothing
Yep.
else.
It's his show.
Yeah, for sure. A guy who's just disregards his woman completely. Because at the end of the day, I mean, we all want somebody to make us feel valued, make us feel respected.
100%. Yeah.
So it's not always everything the guy wants, nothing about what the girl wants. Like, yes, you are the man, but why would she want to stick around if you never care about what she wants? So there's a little give
Yeah,
and
for
take
sure.
there.
Yeah, it
Um,
goes both ways.
what else? What else would I say? Probably a mama's boy. I heard a lot of girls say that when a guy is like just super, super into his mom. Now, I'm Italian. Like me and my mom have an amazing relationship. So I can kind of relate to that because like I definitely was that growing up. Um, I get it. Like I've been super close to my mom, but some guys take it too far and they kind of expect, I think, their girlfriend to be their next mother to where she's doing all the small things that
Oh,
like his mom used to do, which
yeah.
is not gonna do all that. Like she'll cook, she'll clean, she'll do all that, whatever. But I'm talking like the small details that like a mother should probably only
Yes.
like you don't want to go to your girlfriend and be like what I was saying before, like complaining constantly about your problems,
Yep.
about what's wrong with you, why can't I do XYZ? You could tell your mom, just not your girl. Don't do that.
Yeah, agree. Like your girl should not be making your doctor's appointments and shit like that.
Yes, exactly. Exactly my point. Yeah, like folding your socks or like making sure that your shoelaces are tied, like something stupid like that. Like that
Ironing your shirts, like, nah.
anything.
Yeah.
That would probably help out a little bit. Actually wouldn't mind some ironing. I wouldn't mind that. But yeah, that's
Oh,
very true. That's very true. Yeah, as a last one, I think I'd probably throw in there, um, red flag, like a guy. I mean, same thing for women, like a guy who's like a woman hater, like a guy who just thinks all women are gold diggers,
yeah,
promiscuous, whatever is a very negative like association with women. Same
for
thing. I mean,
sure.
there's no
Yep.
difference between like a girl who's hates men and then a man who hates women. It's like two sides of the same coin. So I would say that like a dude's it's just like too butthurt and resentful of women. Like you're not gonna connect with that kind of guy.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Conversations would just never flow.
No,
It
not
would
at all.
always end up in an argument.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's a lot of like I don't know if you're familiar with the red pill.
I'm not.
there's kind of a lot of layers there, but it's basically like a movement or a community of guys that understand like female nature, how women are, how to be successful with relationships, psychology, all kind of stuff. There's a lot of great stuff in there. I'm not saying it's all bad, but what I've noticed is some men will kind of project some of their traumas from women onto like other women in the group. So what I'm saying is guys will like get mad and blame women for all their problems and be like, "Oh my God, it's because women take all the money, they're gold diggers, that's why divorces are so high," and like XYZ. So there's
Yeah.
those kind of guys that are very like into that whole idea behind women are just the problem, and they get very resentful. And it's like, dude, are you single? That's probably why, because you hate girls.
Yeah.
It's not gonna help you. It's only gonna hurt
Yeah.
you.
Yes. It goes both ways. We're
Hmm.
both the problem.
I agree. I agree.
So we just got to figure out how to honestly, I think it all comes down to communication.
It does.
You've just got to talk and speak. Like you learn about that a lot in sales. Like
Hmm.
you just got to learn. You got to consistently learn about each other, what your ticks are, what you like, what you don't like. Like
Yep.
communication is so big in really anything, like
Hmm.
family, relationships, friendships, jobs,
Yeah.
anything. I think we just all need to get better communicators. I think that I think we're struggling because we're so used to like,
Yeah, for
texting in
sure.
our phone. It's so much easier to like send a text or send an email or
Hmm.
I don't know, just be distracted about on your phone versus having like a real conversation. So
Hmm.
that's a whole nother conversation, but I think really that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. I mean, that's literally like a whole other podcast if we wanted. Like that's literally
Yeah,
I think that one of the biggest issues is that lack of communication and the fact that there is no dialogue. I think it
yeah,
goes for both people. Like we've made a lot of assumptions of what the other person wants. Like men think women want a certain thing, but really they like this, or women think men want a certain thing, but they like this.
it's like
And
we're trying to become mind readers, and that's never going to be a thing.
yeah, for sure. 100%.
Yeah,
Now there's obviously like biology that comes to it. Like there's things that we are just primally attracted to. I don't think those things generally change. I mean, there's
yeah,
exceptions, but I like yeah, like you said, I think it comes down to values, it comes down to knowing yourself, having awareness, and communicating them and communicating boundaries and say, I'm not okay with this. I do like this. I don't like this. I think people are just
yeah.
too afraid to like step on toes, but you have
I
to.
agree. I think taking ownership is huge too. Like you have to admit when you're wrong and you have to admit when you fucked up and like what you're gonna do to fix it. Like I think taking ownership is so huge. I think it's
Yeah,
extremely attractive too when you know that you're in the wrong or you know you messed up. But like
for sure.
that means that you're aware. I think creating awareness is huge too of every situation.
Hmm. I agree. I agree 100%. Um, I got time for one more question and then we can kind of end it if you're down.
Yeah. I didn't realize how late it's getting. So yeah, I'm
Yeah,
down.
I know we were just kind of going on about this.
Rambling, yeah.
Dude, it happens. I mean, I
They're
could,
good conversations though. These
yeah,
are great.
absolutely. I think it's something that needs to happen. But I wanted to squeeze this one in there because I know this is another talking point that gets thrown out so many times, and I'd love
Hmm.
to get a girl's perspective on it.
For
So
sure.
there's a lot of guys, especially in my industry, that talk about when a guy reaches a certain level of status or a certain level of value, that it's almost okay for him to cheat, or basically like it's not
Yeah.
considered cheating when he gets to that level because he has a certain status, et cetera, et cetera. Women generally date up, so in their minds, like I guess their point is that there's since there's not that many high value guys like that, and there's all these beautiful women and all these women with value, it's almost a rarity to be that kind of guy. So him, going outside of that relationship is okay because there's less of him and more of them is basically the mindset, which I personally don't agree with. I think that's kind of an excuse to just chase pleasure. But yeah, I'd love to get your perspective on that. Like if you were dating like a really, like I'm saying, super successful, super high value dude, has a lot of status, a lot of success, would you be okay if he was it's like, hey, you're gonna have to share me. Like that's just the way it is.
No, absolutely not. I would say my biggest value when I'm the biggest value for me in a relationship is loyalty. um I don't want to share you. Like, what's the point of sharing? Like, what's the point of having you if somebody else can have that too? Like, that
Sure.
just makes you easy.
Mm-hmm.
And I know from a men's perspective of a high value man, that's what he wants to call himself if that's what he's doing. I don't consider, like, I don't care how much money you have in the world. It's just, it's freaking paper. I think that if you're a high value man, you have loyalty, you have trust, you have true love and a good heart, and you're a good person
Mm-hmm.
too. So, yeah, I don't vibe with that at all.
Yeah.
I don't, I think that's stupid. I don't, I could never be me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think there's many girls that would agree with that. Not that I know of that would be like, yeah, that's totally fine with me. Um,
Yeah.
I think this kind of brings up the point of like monogamy and polygamy and like which one is preferred or which one like people are generally. And I've done a ton of research on this. I'm still looking into it, so I'm not going to make any like bold statements or anything like that. But I know in terms of like statistics when it comes to kids and having a healthy like family, they generally work better monogamous. So like one man, one woman, two parents, kids, whatever. That's usually the best situation to raise a family.
Hmm.
But polygamy, it's like that can kind of get very messy. If both parents are seeing other people or if just one is seeing other people, well then the kids see that and they grow up in that
Yeah.
environment. It's like, what are they going to do? It's the exact same thing. I mean,
Exact same thing. Yeah.
you can literally look
I
at
think your
like,
childhood is so important. I mean, you
yeah,
see and you learn so much when you're young. Like, that's just what you know and what you see, right? At that point in your life. I think
hmm
there's a lot of trauma that comes with certain situations, and I think that that would bring a lot of trauma, or like those people, those kids will have trouble growing up and fitting in, and
hmm
I don't know, they'll struggle with relationships. Yeah, I think it could be a pretty toxic environment for a family.
hmm Yeah, I would agree with that. I think you can really just look at the situation that happened with like Will Smith and his wife and that whole crazy situation. I mean, look at that. And that's that's a prime example of like someone that they weren't faithful. They kind of did their own thing and it causes a lot of issues because especially when the other person there's always going to be one person that doesn't want it as much. And I feel like to find two people that are completely okay with polygamy, hey, if that's what you guys want, great. I just feel like that's pretty rare where both people are
Yeah.
like on that same page. So I don't know. I'm kind of in the same camp as you because I think if a guy is committing to a one woman, like he has to be honoring that commitment. I'm big on integrity. I'm big on
Mhm.
a guy having character. And if he has a girlfriend or a girl that he says that's my girl, well, why would you want to go out and just mess around with a random chick and just chase pleasure? Because it's not conducive to a healthy relationship. I mean, it's kind of
Yeah,
common
I agree.
sense.
Makes no, yeah, it doesn't make sense in my eye. And I think to give a different perspective on this too, with women who, we're becoming more independent and we're
Mm,
getting in these higher roles in the world and leadership and, becoming successful and making lots of money. Like, as a person who's making a lot of money and is at a high level, and you're dating this guy who is high level too, like, I don't need that person at all in my life. It's just a person that you want. So it's like, if you're not loyal to me, then you're literally benefiting me in like zero way. Like, we're so,
true.
you could so easily drop that person. Like, I know it's probably rare.
Mm,
It's not as often, but like, what's the point?
hmm Yeah, I get that perspective. Like, yeah, if you have your finances taken care of and obviously you're with a man for other reasons and he's not giving you those reasons, well, what's the
Yeah.
point? You know, it's kind of just like what are you getting out of it? I can yeah,
Hmm.
I can see that.
Yeah. But again, I wouldn't say as popular as just like the normal duo, but
Mhm.
just another perspective to throw out there too
Yeah.
for that specific topic. Yeah, that's an interesting one.
Hmm. Yeah, I bring that up just because it's talked about so much in this space and there's a lot of polarized takes and opinions about it, but I just feel like if you're going to commit to a person, commit. If you're not, then stay single. It's pretty simple. Like if you're not ready for that,
Yeah.
you don't want to be in that kind of dynamic, then stay single and like focus on yourself. I don't really believe in like dating for no reason, so I can't really say like casually date, but just like enjoy yourself, like go out with people, have fun.
Yeah.
Don't like disrespect yourself, but see what's out there, but don't make a commitment and then be like, nah, I'm cool. I'm gonna go see what else is out there. That is
Yeah.
kind of fucked up.
Yeah. And then like not only like it's selfish in a way, like not only are
Yeah.
you creating toxic, I don't even know how to word this. Not only are you creating just a bad relationship, but you're throwing trauma onto that person. And now that person's going to become a man hater and they're going to go
Right.
through that phase. And then, you know what I mean? It's a repetitive
Hmm.
cycle. And then they're going to get that girl's going to get her girlfriends on board and then they're all going to hate you. And then they're all going to
Yep.
hate men. And it's just like,
Hmm.
that's not a world that we should be, or vice versa. Like if the woman were
Hmm.
to cheat, the man's gonna hate women and gonna have issues and trauma that they're gonna have to deal with, and it's just not fair. Like why would you project that onto somebody else?
Hmm. That's a great point because then it just leads to that cycle of trauma, which
Yeah,
just reinforces that same thing we were talking about, like hating the other gender, hating the other
the
sex,
other
and be like,
gender. Yeah,
well, all women are like that, all men are like that, they do this, they do that. I mean, it's just kind of like the blame game, and it just turns into just a very negative, miserable life.
yeah,
But
very
yeah,
messy situation. Yeah, and going back to our first podcast we did together of manifestation, like these people are consistently talking about, oh, men are trash. I hate men because they're all cheaters. It's like, well, you're consistently saying that and doing that and thinking that, then yeah, you're gonna attract that person. So it's like
facts.
there's no win out of doing it if you think you're gonna cheat or be disloyal. Like, don't be in a relationship, I think, at the end of the day.
Hmm. I agree. I agree with that. And I'd say to the people that do think that, and I'm sure none of them watch this because they probably would never look at content like this and take it seriously. But for the people that do say, like, oh, all women are trash, all men are trash, really think about that statement and ask yourself if you're a man, is your woman, is your mom trash? Is your sister trash? Is your grandmother trash? Same thing for women. Like, is your father trash? Brother, uncle?
Exactly.
Just think about that statement and really be like, oh, wow, I know some good men or some good women in my life. That's not the
Yep.
case. So yeah, anytime you're dealing with absolutes, it it's never, yeah, it's not usually a good thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that kind of wraps it up perfectly. We talked about it a lot in terms of
Yeah.
relationships and just really good topics. Yeah, is there anything else you wanted to add or kind of closing statements?
No, nothing to add. I think, that could be saved for later conversations because it could spiral again.
For sure.
So no, I think I'm good.
Cool. Yeah,
I
same
hope
here.
that this resonates with some people out there and, people
Hmm.
take our advice. That's always like my
Yep.
reason as to speaking about things like this. So
Hmm. Yeah,
yeah, it was a good talk.
I'm sure they will. I think, likewise, like I want to put this out there to get people to think differently or start to think a little bit more about both of us, like men and women, what we both like, what we
Yeah.
both don't like. I think that was good to have that kind of dialogue, which I think we need more of. So if you guys like this, give it a thumbs up, comment your thoughts down below, subscribe if you're new. If you want to follow Brandy, again, I'll leave all her stuff down below. Her IG. I think that's the only thing you're usually on is IG, right?
Yeah, just IG for the most part.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll leave her stuff down below. Hopefully we'll have her on for a future call. This is great. Every time we're have a call like this, it branches out to so many different things. So I'd love to have it on again.
Yeah, I'm happy to come on anytime you want. I love these talks. I think they're super beneficial and I think it's cool to talk through stuff that not a lot of people are talking about. So I'm always happy
Exactly.
to join.
Yeah, 100%. I'm down. All right, guys. Well, we're going to get going and wrap it up here. Have an awesome rest of your week. Tune in next week. I will have another guest, and you know how this thing goes. So, see you guys next week. Peace.